Storytime about the boy across the street who used to stalk me. So a little background information. My parents and I moved into a new house that was literally 5 minutes from where I used to live. But I went to private school, and almost all the other kids in my town went to the public school. So I didn't really know a lot of the kids in my town. Well, a week after we moved in, our neighbors across the street invited us to a barbecue. While we were there, I started talking to our neighbor's older son, and him and I started to get along really well. Like, in a flirty way. Their older son was a senior, I was a sophomore, and their younger son was a freshman. Well, I kind of talked to the younger son, but he was just like giving me really weird vibes. So for the next few weeks, I started hanging out with their older son a lot, and we would talk all the time. Well, the one day whenever I went over their house, it was super weird. His younger brother kept saying, "Oh, I think I know you from somewhere. Like, I swear I know you." And I'm just like, okay. Well, the one morning I was waiting outside for my mom to pick me up because she worked night shifts and she would just grab me and then take me to my school. And I saw him in his window watching me like for part 2. Part 2 about the boy across the street who used to stalk me. So like I said, I saw him watching me outside his window, but I didn't want to overthink it, so I was just like, no, maybe he's looking at something else. Well, this all started a month after I moved in. Well, it started happening more frequently, so then I told his older brother. We're just gonna call the younger brother Mac. So he talked to Mac and then everything was fine for a week. Just a little information real quick. For the public school, the bus would arrive at 7:40. My private school started at 7 o'clock. So my mom would come and get me at 6:15 because my school was kind of far away. So like I said, it was a week later. Every morning that I would go outside to wait for my mom, Mac would be standing on his porch watching me. Oh, but it gets worse. So one night I was in my bedroom, right? And this is like some scary movie shit. I kept seeing something run past my window. My bedroom was on the first floor. So I told my dad about it and he put cameras outside. Well, Mac's older brother told me that Mac was always interested in my life. So me being a smart ass bitch, I told his older brother that our cameras didn't work, like for part 3. Part 3 about the boy that lived across the street who used to stalk me. So like I said, I told his older brother that our cameras didn't work anymore, knowing that he would tell Mac. Because he had it in his head for some reason that Mac wasn't obsessed with me. And the reason why I told him our cameras didn't work was because Mac was watching while the cameras were being set up outside. And after that, everything stopped. Except he would still be outside every single morning on his fucking porch watching me. So the one night while I'm sleeping, I wake up to some noise right outside my window. And my bed was on the same wall as the window, so I could see who was right outside my window, but they couldn't see me. Well, I look, and guess who the fuck it is? It's Mac trying to get inside of my fucking window. So I quietly call my dad, and it's like 3 in the morning. So I tell my dad what's going on. So he goes outside and nobody's there. Well, the next day we check the cameras. There's footage of him jerking off outside my window, trying to break into my room with a fucking crowbar. Luckily, I was staying at a friend's that night. Taking pictures of me outside my window. So we showed his parents. Then we moved and they sent him to a mental hospital.
Scary story time about how my stalker of 5 years ended up being somebody very close to me. And they also essayed me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, and send me on Instagram. I'm now in my late 30s, married and pregnant. This all started happening when I graduated from college. My senior year of college was super traumatizing. I started receiving threatening, scary messages on Facebook. I told the dean of the school and my teachers, and they tried to help me but couldn't find the person. In the messages, they would say that if they ever saw me walking by myself, that I needed to be careful, and that they would hurt me if they ever saw me with other men. This made me become isolated. I was afraid to go anywhere but class. When my parents found out, they insisted I move back home but finish college. After I moved back home, everything calmed down. I stopped getting the messages and it was an instant relief. While I was in college, I had made several friends. They all worried about me and constantly looked after me. The boys in my friend group would walk me to and from class. Anytime I went to the library or run errands, my girlfriends would come with me. So after I moved back home, they would all come to visit me. My parents were super grateful to them for taking care of me and giving me their time. After finally graduating college, I thought the nightmare was over, but it was far from over. Around 2012, I decided to open an Instagram account. This is when the threatening messages started up again. They would leave comments under my pictures saying that they were watching me. This person was threatening to kidnap me in messages. They threatened to slash my tires, and they even threatened to hurt my parents if I ever decided to date anyone. When I showed my parents the messages, they decided to hire a private detective. After investigating for 2 months, they basically found nothing. All they could say was that the person who owned the account lived in the US. A few weeks after that, I found a note on my windshield. When I opened the note, it had really graphic drawings on it, and on the other side there was a poem written for me. The poem talked about how beautiful I was and how beautiful I would look on my wedding day. At the end of the poem, it was signed by someone named Paul. The handwriting was really specific. I decided to give it to the personal investigator to see if he could find anything out. But again, nothing came of it. Once again, I isolated myself from the outside world. My parents would bring me home food. I was even able to get a job working from home. One day while I was home alone, I noticed an open window in the kitchen. But as I got closer, I could see a man's hand resting on the windowsill. Part 2 is up. Scary story time about how my stalker of 5 years turned out to be somebody very close to me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, but send me on Instagram. When I see the open window, I try not to freak out, but that's when I spot a man's hand resting on the windowsill. It's as if he was trying to climb in. I screamed so loud and pressed the panic button on our alarm. The panic button would instantly inform my parents that I was in danger. It would also let the cops know that I was in danger. I could see the man's head by the window, so I told him that the cops were already on their way. He then slammed the window shut and ran away. When the cops came, they could see that he had cut the wire to the window so the alarm wouldn't sound. The cops tried to get fingerprints from the window but couldn't get any. I told them that I'd had a stalker and that I was sure it was them. That's when the cops told me that there was nothing they can do because this person didn't actually hurt me. After that, we installed cameras around the perimeter of the house. I started going shooting to learn how to use a weapon, and I even started training in kickboxing. Everything calmed down for the next year. I was finally able to feel normal and safe in my own home. This is when I decided to have a social life again. I started going out with friends and even went on a few dates. On one occasion, my friends and I all went to a party. Unfortunately, I got pretty wasted. It was the first time I ever felt safe at a party and was actually having fun. I passed out on a bed, and when I woke up, my shirt was open. I told one of my friends, but we couldn't be sure what had actually happened. I didn't feel any pain, but I definitely knew someone had opened my shirt. My group of friends took me home and I tried to just forget about it. But literally the following day, I get a message again on Instagram, and it's from the same exact person. Even though I had blocked them a million times, they kept making accounts to get in contact with me. But this time they told me that they had so much fun with me last night. And that's when I came to the realization. The person who opened my shirt last night was the same person sending the messages. I mean, how could they know that any of this happened? Then he sent me the scariest picture. It was me at the party, passed out on my bed. Part 3 is up. Story time about how my stalker of 5 years turned out to be somebody very close to me. It's not my story time, send me on Instagram. After they sent me the picture of me passed out on the bed with my shirt open, I realized that I must have known this person and that they had been hiding underneath my nose the entire time. When I asked my friends if they saw anything weird at the party, they all said no, and there was no way to find out where the picture came from. After I blocked the person once again, I didn't get messages for a few months. During that time, 2 of my friends got married. They had been boyfriend and girlfriend throughout all our time in college, and they were the ones that would take care of me along with our other friends. I was one of the bridesmaids and it was actually really fun. I was able to get my mind off of things while I helped plan the wedding. I decided to bring a cute notebook and have everyone sign it that day. At the end of the day, I would give it to the bride and the groom. After the wedding, we all went to the reception. That's when I passed the notebook around and had everyone sign it and leave a note. I also gave it to the bride to sign and the groom. Before I gave it to them at the end of the night, I decided to look through the pages and see what everyone wrote. When I finally got to the last pages, I checked the groom's signature, and it looked almost exactly the same as the one from the poem all those years ago. My stomach dropped and I knew instantly that it was him. It made so much sense. He was always around during college. He knew my schedule really well because he and the other guys would walk me to and from class. He also knew the safety measures my family and I took. I felt extremely violated. I considered him one of my best friends who had my best interest. And this whole time, he was the one stalking me for years. But I had to do something before they left on their honeymoon that night. I quickly ran home and grabbed the note to compare the signatures. When I got back to the wedding, I showed the bride both the signatures. She was shocked because they were exactly the same. We both confronted him, but he denied it. My best friend got the marriage annulled. He still denies everything. Our friend group doesn't talk to him, and he even moved a state away. But since then, I haven't gotten any messages and it's been years now. We all know it's him, but he doesn't admit it. I'm not sure how to prove that he was a stalker and possibly essayed me. What should I do?
My BFF disrespected me, so I got revenge. So my name is Charlotte and I'm currently a sophomore in high school. And my best friend is Mia, or so I thought she was my best friend. And we had another best friend. His name was Lewis. We were all a trio. We met in middle school and kept growing our friendship from there on out. So at first, I told Mia that I liked Lewis. And she was very supportive of our relationship. In fact, she shipped us all the time. But then after that, one day I came to school and they ended up dating, which I was very confused about. I told her I don't understand why she did what she did, but she told me she did what she did because he liked her anyways. She told me if I was a good best friend, I would be supportive and put my feelings aside, which I did for a long period of time. One day, me and Lewis were talking and I looked at his phone and I saw certain pictures on his phone. Nudes from the same gender of him. So I'm not gonna lie, I went to tell Mia and you will not believe what she said. Make sure to follow for the next part. My BFF disrespected me, so I got revenge, part 2. Since I saw these photos on Lewis's phone, I ended up telling Mia that I saw these photos and I suspected that he might be bisexual or bi-curious. She gave me a look of disgust and said, "Mia, I understand you're jealous, but you don't have to sit here and make lies of Lewis up. That's really messed up. And that's honestly disgusting. Ever disrespect him again, I promise you I will end you." And I was so confused because 1, she's never talked to me like this before, and 2, it's crazy that she'd think I'd do something like that. Faking someone's sexuality, that's a serious thing. So I just looked at her and said, okay. And this is when my plan began. I decided I was going to take Lewis away from her to prove a point. So that's what I did. I remember that Mia and Lewis had a date, and Lewis told me to tell Mia, which I did. But instead, I told her that she had a date at 8 p.m., not 6 p.m. So I helped her get ready and I made her actually look pretty horrible. And she ended up arriving at the date 2 hours later. He was on the verge of leaving, and he was actually extremely mad. You will not believe what he said. It was pretty shocking. Follow for the next part. My BFF disrespected me, so I got revenge part 3. He was really mad and he said, "This is exactly why I should have never dated you. You're always late and you're not on time and don't respect anyone but yourself." They must have been having relationship problems because he's not the type of person to blow up. It takes him a lot to blow up. So I was pretty shocked when he said this, but also happy. So I honestly just continued the process of ruining their relationship. I messed up any dates, I made her look horrible, and 5 months later, they broke up, finally. So I decided to make my move on Lewis. I told him I had something important to tell him after school, and we met on the bleachers on the football field. I told him that I always liked him. I told him that I liked him for a very, very long time, and he said that he was flattered, and he was willing to date me and give us a try. I told him that Mia decided to date him, especially after I told her that I liked him. He was disgusted by this idea, and we both decided to drop her. Now we're in a happy relationship for about 3 years now. Thankfully, it was all worth it. Do you think this person had a justified reaction? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like story times like this, don't forget.
Am I the asshole for changing my baby's name despite promising my dead husband's family I'd name the child after him? I lost my husband due to COVID when I was about 3 months pregnant. After he died, my mother-in-law thought it would be a great idea to name the baby after him if he was a boy. I agreed because I was overwhelmed with emotion. She said it would be like he's still there in a way. When my son got here, even though I still wanted to honor him, I'm not so sure I wanted to name the baby after my husband. I feel like that's just sticking to the past and that my baby should be his own person, so I give him a different name on his birth certificate. When I made the announcement on Facebook that baby Lucas had arrived, I started getting confused comments from my mother-in-law. She called me a few hours later asking why I'd broken the promise. Am I the asshole for changing my baby's name despite promising my dead husband's family I'd name the child after him? My mother-in-law asked me why I broke the promise. I told her my reasoning and that I just wanted to move on in a healthy way. That I felt like calling my husband's name when referring to my son would hurt me and make the process harder. She didn't yell at me, but she did say how disrespectful it was to my husband to not include him in my son's life in some way. She also brought up the fact that I didn't tell her or his extended family that I was changing my mind. I told her personally that I felt like I didn't need to, as she was just my mother-in-law, not my husband. She raised her voice and said she'd been waiting all this time to meet her grandson and now she doesn't even want to see him. I said that was fine and hung up. I do feel bad.
Husband, 24 male, is withholding my, 23 female, sexual satisfaction until I lose weight. Husband, 24 male, and I, 23 female, have been married for about 9 months after dating for 2 years. We waited until marriage for sex, mostly due to his religious beliefs. We were both excited for our honeymoon, but unfortunately, things took a turn when he ended up unhappy with how I looked naked. We did manage to consummate the marriage, but it was clear he wasn't really into it. Now, keep in mind, I am 5'6", and at the time was 135 pounds. A very healthy weight. However, although I was not medically overweight, he said my stomach and thighs were too chunky and requested I lose 20 pounds before we have intercourse again. I tend to wear very flattering clothes, so I guess my issues weren't noticeable when dressed. In the meantime, he has been requesting oral pretty much every day with, of course, no reciprocity of any kind or even affection. Since then, I've been working so hard to lose weight, but have only lost 15 to 20 pounds. I'm down 2 clothing sizes and in the best shape of my life, but my husband still isn't happy enough with my appearance and accuses me of not trying hard enough. In the meantime, I'm hungry and grumpy from losing weight. I didn't need to lose weight from a health perspective. If not for my husband, I would much rather be at my previous healthy weight and be able to enjoy a burger or a cupcake now and then. I'm afraid I'm falling out of love with him after being treated this way. I know no marriage is perfect, but it's so heartbreaking to be treated like an object that is never quite pretty or shapely enough. And if it's like this, less than a year in, it's probably not going to get better, right? I'm just so embarrassed that my marriage is reduced to this and don't know how to tell my family and friends. But also, I feel like I'm fading away and losing myself to expectations I can never really meet. Am I the asshole for watching and doing nothing to help my husband when he was extremely ill? My 27 female husband, Tim, 36 male, has a serious dairy allergy. I'm talking about an actual immune system reaction, not intolerance. His allergy is serious enough to cause acute enterocolitis, but he hasn't needed an EpiPen since he was a kid. I work full-time and also have some seasonal work this holiday season because Tim has been without work and money has been very tight. As a result, I barely get to rest. The holidays are especially hard and I found myself getting just 1 day off every 2 weeks for almost 2 months straight. As you can imagine, that day off means the universe to me. Now, Tim loves dairy, and will sometimes intentionally eat things which trigger his allergy. Lately, it's gotten out of hand, with him going from one risky meal every 4 to 6 months to every 2 or so weeks. In fact, it always seemed to coincidentally line up with my time off, and I found myself spending my one day taking care of him. Last week, I finally asked him if he was intentionally timing it to line up with my day off. I fully expected him to say no, but he admitted that he was doing it to make sure that he'd have a nurse, and so he'd have someone close by in case he had an especially adverse reaction and needed a hospital. I was livid and told him that he was selfish, robbing me of my rest. I said that if he made himself sick again, I wouldn't take care of him. I'm exhausted and I need to decompress. He didn't say much, so I thought he'd heard me. Fast forward to Friday night. I get home from work, and a few minutes in, Tim gets a pizza delivered. I ask him why when I'm making dinner, and he shrugs. I ask if a large garlic Alfredo pizza is worth the pain, and remind him that I won't be giving up my rest day again. He smirks and eats an entire slice while grinning at me. I left it at that and went back to my dinner. Predictably, he got sick, profusely vomiting, retching, and groaning from the intense cramping and diarrhea. I slept in the guest room to get away from the sound and smell. He called for me several times, and I repeatedly told him no. Hours later, he was still sick and woke me up at the crack of dawn to go get him Pedialyte and meds because he was so dehydrated and still in pain. I told him to order it in and asked him to get out and let me sleep. He was still whimpering when I eventually got up to shower and eat. Again, I did nothing to help or comfort him. By evening, he was sulking, and by morning, when I had to go to work, he was enraged. He yelled, and by the end of the day, he told our friends and family that he nearly died, and I neglected him. His family accused me of passively trying to kill him. His mom called, shouting that he could have had a life-threatening reaction due to my petty actions, and that I'm a shit wife for not minding his health. I'm starting to feel guilty because she's right, and he could have been seriously hurt.
Am I the a-hole for selling my PS5 rather than sharing it with my stepbrothers? My 15-male mom and dad met and briefly dated while they were both studying at uni. My mom gave birth to me after they had broken up and had sued my dad for child support. I was raised by my mom. It had virtually nothing to do with my dad throughout my childhood. My mom was an international student, and her family cut ties with her due to the circumstances of my birth. Tragically, 2 years ago, I lost my mom to cancer, and thus I was placed under the care of my dad. My dad is remarried and has 2 sons, 5 and 7, with his wife. It wasn't a bad arrangement at first, but we were all essentially strangers. I was given a bedroom to myself and we shared some meals, but other than that, kept to myself. About 10 months ago, I was lucky enough to score a casual job at an aged care facility as IT support. It was stupid easy money as it involves installing and maintaining a dozen or so common PCs used by the residents, plus running basic computing workshops. I ended up accruing a whole lot of disposable income in a short time. Stupidly, instead of just keeping quiet about it, I decked out my room with a new TV, headphone, and a PS5. Obviously, the setup was of great interest to my 2 stepbrothers. Initially, my rule was that they could play the PS5 anytime I wasn't using it, but I would get first dibs if I wanted to play or use my TV. I was also super accommodating by buying an extra controller, which I didn't need, and several kid-friendly games that they wanted to play. I eventually had to change the rule to only play when I was there, because the 5-year-old destroyed one of my controllers through spilling juice on it. This is where the drama started. They whined to my parents, who then ordered me to place the PS5 in the living room. I refused, stating that I had purchased it with my own money. This led to their argument that I have too much money and should contribute rent, utilities, and food money. I called their bluff and said, sure, drop a contract and I'll get a lawyer to review it to ensure it complies with the Family Law Act. My dad then told the boys that he was going to buy a separate PS5 for the boys for Christmas, but the dude is clueless about the global shortage. Finally, last night, after realizing that he had zero chance of buying one for close to recommended retail price, my dad threatened me to either voluntarily gift my PS5 to the boys for Christmas, or he would toss it in the bin while I was at school. I was so pissed that I went on Facebook Marketplace and sold a PS5. The boys found out today and were devastated. I feel real bad because they shouldn't be punished for this crap show. My parents are in their room talking about me, and I'm sitting here in my room. Am I the a-hole? How could I have handled this better?
Am I the asshole for using a diamond from my girlfriend's family heirloom for her engagement ring? My girlfriend, 22 female, and I, 24 male, have been together for about 3 years, and I decided around 5 months ago that I wanted to propose. We share a dog and a home, so it seemed the next logical step. She's hugely into jewelry, so I wanted to get her a really sentimental ring. At the end of September, her grandma suddenly passed away, and as my girlfriend was the only granddaughter, she was passed down her wedding ring. Her and her grandma were extremely close, so I decided to ask her mom, her grandma was her dad's mom, if she thought it'd be a good idea for me to use one of the diamonds in the ring for my girlfriend's engagement ring. She told me that as much as she loved the idea, she didn't know if my girlfriend would, and so told me to think about it. I couldn't find anything else I liked as much. My girlfriend didn't wear the ring as she was worried about losing it, so kept it in a box in a drawer, making it easy for me to take it without her realizing. It ended up being a beautiful ring, and I thought she'd absolutely love the sentiment of it. Well, I proposed. She said yes immediately and was absolutely elated until she saw the ring. She told me I'd practically vandalized and ruined the only meaningful thing of her grandmother's that she had, and that I should have asked. I went to her mom for support, but she just kept saying she warned me that my girlfriend might not like the idea. She said yes to my proposal but refuses to wear the ring, which I just think is disrespectful considering how much money and thought went into it. Am I the asshole?
Me, 28 male, with my wife, 27 female, 5 years together. I cheated a long time ago, and the other woman sent me a letter. What should I do with it? Yeah, I cheated. I regret it probably more than anything because of how bad it hurt my wife. It happened 3 years ago. I met another woman. It was during a time when me and my wife were in a bad place. I slept with the other woman 2 times. I couldn't lie to my wife and just told her what happened. We ended up finding a few weeks later that she was pregnant, so I decided to try hard and to be a better husband. We're in a good place now. She doesn't trust me fully yet, which I know will take years or never happen. She has access to all my devices so she can look whenever she wants, no problem. So here's the thing. When I got the mail today, the other woman sent me a letter. I haven't opened it and don't know what to do. Should I give it to my wife or just throw it away? Should I read it and show my wife, or read it together, or what? I don't know how to proceed and could use some help here on what to do.
I, 18-year-old female, am a cashier at a grocery store in my town. This afternoon, we had a large group of people come in together. Turns out they were extreme couponing. For anyone unaware of this, it's basically people who clip coupons and shop for a shit ton of groceries and they hope to pay as little as possible. We see couponers all the time, but I've never seen anyone go as crazy as this family did. So basically the mom had hundreds of coupons and she didn't bring any money because she thought if she didn't bring money, it would encourage her to do her best and get her groceries for free. Eventually she finished shopping and she had about 6 carts full of stuff. My manager shut my lane down and helped me bag, and then we started ringing. We get to the end and I'm ringing in the coupons when I get an error message on my screen that says my POS, point of sales, reached the maximum number of coupons for the transaction. So my manager voided the transaction and we started again and tried to keep each group items together, but we kept having the issue with the coupons. We even tried multiple transactions, but my store only had 5 registers and there were people waiting to check out and we couldn't get the coupons to go through properly. So the lady just decided she didn't want to get anything after all and wouldn't be buying anything in her cart. Her total after tax before coupons was $789.78. There were roughly 500 items listed on her receipt per diem. The rule at my store is if a customer decides not to buy something at the register, then the cashier has to put it all back before they can go home. I had been at work since 5 a.m. and I was scheduled to leave at noon. I had to put everything back and I didn't get off work until about 30 minutes ago. Anyway, when she said she wasn't going to buy anything after all, I had a visceral reaction and said to her, "Are you fucking serious? I have to put all this back by myself." The customer started bitching, so did her group. My manager got in my face, and I think the phrase lazy brat got thrown around. I guess her parents think that she was wrong, that she shouldn't have said anything to the customer, but her coworkers are like, "Nah, fuck that bitch." As per my NDA, I am not allowed to discuss this position with former employers. Since my firing is effective immediately, you are now a former employer. Gather round as I tell you the story of the time I got fired at the worst place I have ever worked. From day one, it was a nightmare. There was zero onboarding or training. I was simply given the login info for a couple of different websites and told to get to work. This company planned large conferences and I was in charge of speaker coordination. I was the only person in this role. The information solely resided with me. Not a big deal, I say to myself. I'm good at thinking on my feet. I'll just ask questions when I need clarification on something. That turned out to be impossible. I once asked if she had time to hop on a call and explain something to me, and she responded with, "He needed me to be self-sufficient." Regardless, I did my best in the position. Small mistakes happened here and there, but overall the speakers were very happy and felt well supported. I struggled on the communication with my manager, but I thought the company was happy with my work. Until 4 months in, when I was randomly pulled into a meeting with my manager, HR, and legal. Effective immediately, I was fired. I asked why was I being fired, and since this was the first time I had heard of any problems, why wasn't there a write-up or a verbal warning? My manager said it was because the 10 minutes, I ran the analytics, it takes me to respond to an email was too slow. That was a bullshit reason, and we all knew it. To be honest, I was furious. We do the exit interview with HR, and she asks me to send over any documents I had and describe where I was at in regards to our next event and our speakers. As per my NDA, I am not to discuss intimate details or share documents relating to this position with any employer, past or future. Since this firing was effective immediately, you are now a former employer, and I am bound by my NDA. HR hemmed and hawed a little bit, telling me that of course I could speak to them about it. This was about their event. I pulled out my copy of the NDA and pointed out the exact clause and said that it clearly stated that if I violated this NDA, I would be sued. So no, I can't talk to you about it. HR turned to legal, and legal pointed out that I was technically correct. Apparently the event was a shit show, and my manager nearly lost her job because of it. All because I take too long to respond to emails. Am I the asshole for secretly signing up my brother-in-law for spam mail and emails whenever he pisses me off? My husband is an identical twin. When we first started dating, he said it was very important to him to have a relationship with his brother. He never questioned it and always supported them having a friendship. We were all friends and in the same program in college, until my husband and I got engaged. He would call my husband multiple times throughout the day, would text him nonstop, and would even get mad at me or him if he didn't answer when we were together. It became very clear to me that his brother had an extremely dependent relationship on my husband. When we got married, I asked my husband to set some boundaries with his brother after he called multiple times while we were... My husband agreed, and he was starting to get really tired of his constant interruptions as well. This is what began World War III. Anytime he was with his brother, he would constantly tell him how controlling I was, how I didn't really care about him, and I was forcing him into a relationship. My husband, for the most part, ignored him, and we moved on. Even when we had our children, he would constantly blame our children for my husband not wanting to hang out with him anymore. We spend the next 6 years with him constantly trying to break us up, whining about his relationship and mooching off of anyone he can. He also treated his wife like crap. She finally got the courage to leave him and invited me over after they had split. Then she proceeds to tell me that the main reason she divorced him was because he had been cheating on her their entire relationship, and she had proof. Everyone in their family lets him get away with it, and no one ever came first. So he's always getting away with shit. No one ever comes for him because if you do, then he throws a fit, and then the whole family will get mad at you. So I took it into my own hands. Every week or so, or anytime he annoys me, I sign him up for a free catalog, spam email, an embarrassing pamphlet, my personal favorite, a magazine subscription to Cheaters recovery programs. After a pretty terrible family dinner, I was feeling annoyed, so I go to sign him up. My husband catches me and asks me what I'm doing. I tell him the truth, and while he was thinking it was a little funny, he told me to stop. I told him no, I'm not going to do that. I found while doing this, it became a lot easier to be around him, because I know in some small way, karma is getting him. My husband is telling me not to be so petty and to just move on. Am I the asshole?
Am I the asshole for telling my wife she embarrassed everyone during our son's birthday dinner? My wife, 42 female, currently works as a part-time nurse. I, 42 male, work in the local police department as a detective. We have 2 kids, a son, 12, and a daughter, 13. My wife has started wanting to save money, and it's starting to annoy the kids. We were giving them $10 a week for allowance, but my wife decided to lower it to $3 because she thought $10 was too much. I told her that I think this amount is too low, but she disagrees. Another example is she buys meals to bring to restaurants to be microwaved. We've gotten looks before and it's always turned down. It results in her making a fuss and being asked to leave. I have told her that she needs to stop and that when we go out, I am fine with her ordering whatever she wants. I normally pay for the groceries, the bills, and food when we eat out. My wife helps with small payments and buys our kids cheap clothes. My daughter likes to wear designer clothing and I normally will buy the clothes and hear about it from my wife. My son was turning 12 and he wanted to eat out at his favorite steakhouse. I told my wife not to bring any of her meals along to the restaurant. We got to the restaurant and sat down at the table. My wife got up to use the bathroom and we ordered our drinks. When the drinks arrived, we ordered our food and she got a small salad. The waiter came back with a meal and said, "Ma'am, we can't warm this up for you." I saw my son and daughter both look embarrassed.
I apologized to the waiter. My wife spent the rest of dinner staying silent and wouldn't touch the salad she ordered. When the evening was over, we got home and my wife and I began to argue about it. I told her she was wrong to bring a meal when I asked her not to. She started to argue back that eating out is a waste. I then said she embarrassed everyone, including our kids.
Am I the asshole? I didn't want to wait for my wife to get dressed. So my wife and I have been married for a year. She usually takes an extremely long time to get dressed, and if she's not happy with the look, she'll ask me to wait and wear another dress and do the makeup again. So we are always late to events. Today I had to go to my best friend's home for his wedding anniversary, and I told her to get ready on time. I even reminded her like 4 hours prior and got her a salon appointment. As usual, she was running us late. My friend and his wife were stalling the celebration just for me. I got mad at my wife and told her to find a way to my friend's place herself and that I was leaving without her. She requested for me to wait for her, but I just left without her. She didn't come at all and called me saying she doesn't want to come on her own because she doesn't want all the attention to be on her due to her being late. I told her to do as she pleases and that she needs to be punctual if she wants to come somewhere with me. She started crying and cut the call. Am I the asshole? Am I the asshole? I didn't consult my wife about a decision regarding my inheritance. I inherited a house from my parents after their death. I wrote it off in my daughter's name without consulting with my wife. My daughter will get it after she is 21 years old. Until then, it'll be in my guardianship, and in case of my death, the guardianship will be transferred to her godparent or my lawyer. No one except me, my daughter, and my lawyer can access the money within it. In case of her death, my lawyer will be looking into transferring it to someone else. My wife says I should have thought of her first instead of my daughter's godparent.
My life has imploded. Husband, 29 male, slept with my mom, 55 female, right before we got married 2 years ago. He confessed it to me yesterday out of guilt. The details are that he was extremely drunk on his bachelor party night, which I knew had happened. He doesn't drink often and overdid it. Said the next morning he didn't remember anything after a certain point. I thought nothing of it. Looking back, I can see how he was acting pretty off, which I assumed at the time was wedding jitters. Now he's told me he did remember coming home that night, which was when my mom, staying with us that week for the wedding, came on to him. He went along with it to the point of ending up having sex in her bed. In fact, he passed out in her bed and was there the whole night. My bachelorette party was the same night. I came home around 3 a.m. to see he wasn't in our bed. I texted him, but assumed he had crashed with a friend, as he'd said he might do that if things got crazy. But he was actually with my mother, right in the room next fucking door. The next morning, he quietly slipped out while I was still asleep, then opened the door pretending he'd just come home after sleeping off the drunkenness at his friend's. He got into bed with me and told me that lie. As if that wasn't enough, he also initiated sex soon after. He'd been fucking my mother mere hours before. We got married the very next day. Fuck everything. I literally cannot believe this. My mother has a history of trying to flirt with guys I've dated and being inappropriate. Not this bad, but still. My husband knew this. We laughed about it. He assured me he would never, in a million years, think she was attractive. What the fuck? I called her last night, just said, quote, husband told me everything. She spent several minutes pretending not to know what I was talking about, then denying everything and saying he was making it up. Then claiming she'd woken up next to my husband, forcing himself on her. The sheer audacity of the bullshit she is capable of is beyond any disgust I can properly convey. I eventually just ended the call. I could not stop crying. She refused to even admit the truth, let alone take any responsibility or apologize. I'm not even worth basic honesty in my own mother's eyes. I'm not even worth a half-assed I'm sorry to her. The person who's supposed to love you no matter what. And does she also think I'm stupid? Why keep lying to someone who knows you're lying unless you actually think they'd fall for your shit? Today I can't cry at all. Everything feels unreal. I'm completely lost and almost feel like I dreamed this or something. I've lost the two most important people in my life because they decided that I wasn't as important to them as having a quick fuck. Well, I hope it was the best 10 minutes of their lives. And sure, maybe my husband didn't come home that night with the planned intention of sleeping with her. He probably didn't, and it was just horrible judgment from overdrinking. That doesn't change the fact he and my mom had sex. No one should be able to say that about their spouse. How is that normal? I cannot imagine remaining in a marriage where my spouse has fucked my mom, literally 2 nights before our wedding. There's simply no coming back from that, right? No, I will never, quote, get over or forgive it. I feel absolutely revolted that for the last 2 years, they've been at family visits together, acting more or less normal, with me right there, like a stupid fucking clueless fool. There's probably much more I'm forgetting, but maybe it doesn't even matter. I'm just done. My life is gone, and I have no idea where I will be next week, let alone next year. We were going to be together for the rest of our lives. Now it's gone, just like I have nothing. What can I do now? How do I possibly explain to the rest of my family why we're divorcing? I am so humiliated.
Am I the asshole for getting angry with my girlfriend and demanding she pay to replace my sheets after she got blood on them? I, male 26, have been dating my girlfriend, female 24, for about a year now, and we recently moved in together. She didn't have a lot of furniture, so it's mostly mine in our apartment, including my bed, frame, mattress, and sheets. I'm a neat freak, and she generally is too, so we get along pretty well living together. Now, I'm not one of those guys that gets grossed out over a woman having her menstrual cycle. I've done the nasty with my girlfriend on lighter days with the towel down. I'll buy her feminine products. I don't get weirded out if she mentions it. I will say, though, it grosses me out getting on the bed. And a few days ago when I woke up, I noticed a blood spot on the bed and got totally grossed out. I knew she had been on her period for 3 days already, so it wasn't any sort of surprise accident. I asked how it happened, and she was upset and said she thought she didn't need to sleep with anything on, meaning no menstrual products. I said that's absurd, and why would she go without wearing anything and get blood all over my bed? I said that was irresponsible and that she needed to pay me for new sheets. She agreed but got upset with me for getting angry and calling her irresponsible. She said she likes to wear nothing when she can and that she thought her flow was light. She said I shouldn't be angry or talk down on something that I don't experience. I said she should be careful with where we sleep and that it was unhygienic.
Story time on when I caught my stepdad abusing my mom. So a little background information, men are trash, and I was 13 and in 7th grade. Well, it was my birthday and my mom took me to the shoe store to get some new shoes, and I saw this guy keep staring at my mother. So I pulled my mom aside and whispered to her, like, hey, there's some dude staring at us, because low-key he looked creepy as hell. Well, apparently he wasn't creepy. He came up to my mom and started talking to her, and he was flirting with my mom a lot, so I grabbed a random pair of shoes and told her I was ready to go. Her and I walk up to the register. I think the conversation is over with her and James. But then he's like, oh, like, let me pay for that. Next thing you know, they exchange numbers and I start seeing him a lot more. And my mom seemed very happy, like she was smiling 24/7. So fast forward, we all move in together and I got a job. Well, my best friend Kayla was 17 and she had her driver's license. So like I said, we all moved in together. My mother was super happy. And I had a job. My best friend would come and pick me up after this job, and I would usually get off work around 7 p.m. Well, around this time, James would have already been at work. He usually started work at like 6 o'clock, but every time that I would come home, my mother would be crying in her bedroom. So I ended up telling my best friend about it, and she said that she would come and get me early the next day from work, so that way we could possibly see what was happening while I wasn't there. So fast forward the next day, Kayla comes and gets me early from work. She pulls around the corner, and we walk to my house because they would have seen her car if we parked on the street. I quietly unlock the door. My best friend and I go upstairs. We hear my mom screaming in pain. And the bedroom door was wide open. He was hitting my mother. So I kind of whispered to my best friend to take a video while I called the cops. He ended up going to jail, got a restraining order, and now my mom and I are living in a new house.
32 male. My friend, 32 female, is extremely hostile about me and my husband, 30 male, having a child and can't see the problem or why it upsets us. Me and my husband had our first child through surrogacy around 7 months ago. It was incredibly difficult to get through the process and get through the red tape, etc. So yes, we were the typical excited parents. But we tried really hard to not spam our Facebook with photos. Seriously, we posted 4 when she was born and then we just text them to those who wanted to see. To keep the silly, soppy statuses to a minimum and generally try to keep our new baby joy to ourselves. Because we too both know how annoying it is to see baby talk all over your newsfeed. Right from the get-go, we were honest with all of our friends about having a child, that we put the time aside to spend time with our friends, that we wouldn't lose contact with them, that we wouldn't make our childless friends listen to our baby talk if they didn't want to hear. I love my friends and my husband loves his friends, and we know that some childless people do not want to hear about kids. So we made sure that was an option for our friends. Every weekend we do something with our childless/single etc. friends without our child. My mum very happily looks after our daughter for us on that night and does not begrudge it at all. We try to accommodate everyone, our friends with kids, our friends who don't have kids and don't want to deal with kid talk and so on. For the most part it works and is really harmonious. Except for one friend, of course. We had a mutual friend, A, though she is more my friend. But when we announced that our surrogate was pregnant, A grew weirdly hostile. We both know A is not fond of children, so we actively avoided bringing up kids and told her if it made her uncomfortable to hear about our upcoming child, she could let us know and we'd stop. A says children are a sore spot for her because her ex pushed her for kids and she didn't want them, so they broke up, and I completely get that. We actively policed our behavior and didn't bring up kids around her, but she's becoming really hostile and downright rude. We announced we are having a child to our friends. A audibly scoffed and rolled her eyes and told us to never bring it near her. We brushed this off at first, but she's continued to make mean comments about children and our children, and at one point kept calling her an it constantly. She was also really rude when we announced we were having a girl and said something like, "You're going to just assume its gender, really?" She's not normally the type of person to get into this whole don't give kids a gender topic, so it was highly out of character for her. And when I joked and said she was being sarcastic, she told me she was deadly serious, and that we were bad parents if we did assume, and that the way she said it was aggressive and pretty nasty. When our baby was finally born and we posted the 4 pictures, A put a status saying, "Here we fucking go, it starts." Whilst it wasn't directly mentioning us, it was posted within 5 minutes of me posting our pictures and announcing our child's birth. I said nothing though because I did not want to get into an argument. She's made comments on and off now since our child was born, both in person and on Facebook. Recently a friend asked how we were doing and how our child was on my Facebook wall. It was aimed at me, no one else and on my wall, so I figure it's fine to talk. My Facebook after all. The following exchange happened with A on that post. Bear in mind, A was not tagged in this, so she will have had no notifications about it and could have hidden it in her newsfeed. A said, "You actually willingly got that kid." I replied, "What?" A said, "They smell funny, they are clingy. They are parasitic creatures feeding off their parents. They are too small and too fragile and probably break way too easily, and they're loud as hell." I replied, "I really don't think saying they are parasitic is appropriate, especially on a post that was in no way aimed at you. You could always hide my post or post aimed at me by unfollowing me or something. Though I very rarely talk about name of child on here, a friend asked how she was doing. You've hijacked the post to say this stuff, which, quite frankly, is in kind of poor taste in a conversation about my child. Do you really hate kids that bad?" A replied saying, "I don't hate them, I just don't see the appeal. I hate arsehole kids at the store that run into me or act like shitheads." I replied, "My child is 7 months, hardly an arsehole kid in the store. You were a baby once, you know," with a winky face. A replied, "I didn't ask to be a baby. I had no control over that. It's not my fault you have thrown away your lives. You also completely gave up on your brother when you had that kid. I don't get why you think I'm the bad one here for stating my opinion. The brother I supposedly gave up on was my little brother, who was in drug recovery and for a time lived with us. When we announced we wanted to have kids, he actively and willingly moved out and found a new place to stay and is doing really well. This was a move of his own choice. He felt strong enough to move out and said the concept of a crying baby was enough to motivate him into moving. But somehow A thinks we abandoned my brother, who I am in daily contact with and give a lot of support to, and who also works in my little company. At this point I stopped communicating since it's easy to get feelings hurt over Facebook. I tried calling her, and then when she didn't answer, I text her. "Hi, what's going on? You seem unusually mad about child's name. You okay?" They replied, "I'm fine, it's not my fault if you misconstrue my words to mean I'm mad." I replied again saying, "It seemed like you were angry about us having a child. We tried to keep child's name out of your life, but you chose to comment on that status." She replied saying, "I genuinely do not understand why you're making a big deal out of this. I was not mad. You are reading way too into it and being overly sensitive." Then I replied again saying, "Your comments were insensitive." She replied, I do not see how they were. I was stating fact. Then goes on to say, what's the best thing to do here? We've been friends since we were about 15 and I don't want to lose such a long and wonderful friendship over this. But I half feel like at any moment she's going to say it's me or the baby and make me pick, which is ridiculous. Are my husband and I really being overly sensitive? I feel like we've really tried hard to accommodate everyone and even stretched ourselves a little thin at times to do so. And A just cannot seem to see a problem with her behavior. If I do cut off the friendship, then it causes a lot of trouble in our friendship circle and family, as this friend is a close family friend to boot, and I'm loath to cause trouble for so many people. Has anyone else had a friend become hostile over the birth of a child? I get that she may feel like she's losing her friend to a baby, but I've tried so hard to keep everything as it was, despite that being very hard to do with a child in our life. Is there anything I can do to ease the tension, or should I stop pandering to her at this point? She blames anything like this on her ex wanting to push kids on her, but I just feel that's a bit of an excuse at this point. 28 male, my girlfriend, 26 female, broke my PS4 and doesn't understand why I'm so upset. I don't really know where to go from here. So some background. During quarantine, I've been playing my PS4 games a lot more. I was able to finish up some stories and complete some big games in my free time the last few months. It was a great escape for me. My girlfriend Liz never got it fully but understood I liked playing it and it made me happy. I told her that I was really looking forward to the PS5 and was hoping to get one soon. I missed out on the pre-order in the initial shipping wave, so I got a bit sad for a while but knew I would eventually get one when the craze settled down, whether it was next year or the year after. Her friend Kat also knew of this because her boyfriend was looking forward to the new Xbox. This is what happened today. This is when shit got bad. I was playing the Final Fantasy VII Remake, finishing up some last achievements when Liz came into the room with Kat. I said, hey babe, how was your day? And without warning, she pulled the PS4 out of the wall and smashed it on the ground. She then took a hammer and smashed whatever pieces were left. This happened within 20 to 30 seconds. I just looked at her shocked. I asked, what happened? Why did you do that? Did I do something to make you mad? This was when I noticed Kat was recording everything with her phone. Liz walks away, then comes back and shows me a PS5 box. I still don't react and she says, Merry Early Christmas. I just walk out the room and go to the bedroom and lock the door. Liz comes knocking an hour later and asks, what's wrong? I thought you wanted a PS5. I told her I couldn't even think about that because she literally just destroyed part of my life that I've created over the last 5 years. I explained to her that she just ruined hundreds of hours of gameplay and saves that I had built up. Liz just said, well, can't you just do it again? This is when I walked out and left the apartment. I came back a couple of hours later with Kat and Liz now both showing off the PS5 to me. Kat says, look, Liz worked really hard to get you this. We just wanted to make you happy. I asked Kat why she was recording. She says that some person on TikTok or Instagram did the same thing to their boyfriend and they were happy. Apparently, that's where they got the idea from. A girlfriend came in and broke the PS4 and gave them a PS5 and everyone cheered or something. I still can't believe it. They wanted to make a video in that spirit with me as the guy. I told Kat a lot of my life was in that PS4 and now it's all gone. Side note, yes I know, I should have backed up on the cloud. I did for some of my games, but a lot of them I just kept on the PS4. I had hundreds of hours from The Witcher 3, Kingdom Hearts games, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy, God of War, The Last of Us, Resident Evil, Devil May Cry games. Many of these titles were fully completed or close to that point. Most of them are now lost. Now Kat is calling me ungrateful and her boyfriend liked the Xbox she gave him. I asked her if she destroyed his old Xbox. She said no and that she just gave it to him gift wrapped last week. I asked why wasn't I given the same treatment, and it was because they saw the video yesterday and got the idea to recreate it. I told Liz I do appreciate the gift, but that she needs to know she broke a part of me that has been built over the years. It sounds stupid, but I was really proud of my collection. Liz then says, well, why can't you just do it on the new PlayStation? I told her I could, but it would take a lot of time and effort that I may not want to put in again. She just brushed it off and said, well, you can now play your new games anyway. They're probably better. At this point I left and went to a friend's house and where I'm writing this now, late at night. I don't know what to do at this point. I really don't care about the PS5 and I'm mad that a fucking viral video made this all happen. What the fuck is wrong with people where they think destroying someone's personal property is funny? They tried showing me the video, but I'm not watching that shit. Liz and I had a great relationship to this point. We've been together for 4 years and this is the only major issue that's come up. Some might think it's just a video game or that I can get past this, but I don't know if I can. It wasn't just that she did it was the fact that after it, she didn't seem to know why or care to know why I'm so upset. I've never had this feeling before and really don't know how to proceed here. My roommate calls my boyfriend our boyfriend. I, 19 female, have been dating my boyfriend Will, 20 male, for about 6 months now. I've been in relationships before, but this is definitely my first serious and healthy one, and I'm really happy with him. We met in our hometown, but we go to different universities that are about 2 hours apart. However, we try to see each other whenever we can, maybe about every 3 weeks. Usually, Will come and visit me, because A, he has a car so it's cheaper and more convenient for him, plus bus routes between our cities no longer exist since Greyhound shuttered. B, a lot of his courses are still online only, whereas I have in-person lectures, and C, my house is a lot nicer than his. Whenever he visits, he stays for 4 to 5 days, which my roommates are okay with. He's also very nice and helpful. If I'm doing chores, he'll help, or he'll help take out the trash / wash dishes / make me breakfast, etc. One of my roommates, Cass, 19 female, was dumped near the end of September, and since then, I felt like she has been weird with Will. A few examples. Number 1, sometimes he'll cook for me if I'm busy at school or working late at the lab, and oftentimes he'll make enough for my roommates too. Almost every time this happens, Cass makes comments about how he's so sweet and that she wishes she had someone like him and how her ex could never. Will and I usually reassure her and say she'll definitely find someone who will treat her right, but she just looks at him expectantly. Expecting what? I don't know. 2. When he helps with manly stuff like taking out the trash, installing a hook in my room, moving heavy things, she always makes sure to linger around and comment about how strong he is and how I'm lucky to have such a fit partner. 3. Whenever he visits, we literally can't avoid her. If we go out, Cass will ask to come with. My roommates and I use an app that tracks our location for safety reasons, and when I go out with Will and don't tell her, she'll usually text me asking me what I'm doing, what my plans are, if I want to hang out, etc. We try to stay in my room, but if Will goes into the kitchen or something, Cass will always happen to wander in. We have to lock my bedroom door when we sleep to make sure she doesn't come in. 4. I'm not much of a drinker, but after our midterms, Cass wanted to have a little thing with just the roommates. It was fun. We drank a little and watched movies. I'm pretty lightweight, so I got sloshed pretty fast, and at some point I was calling Will. And when Cass found out I was calling him, she was like, "Is that Will?" and kept ripping the phone from my hands very aggressively. She's a lot stronger than I am, and really loudly started talking about her sex life and asking him about his, saying shit like, "Make sure you hit it deep." Oh my. This is pretty in character for Cass, who claims to enjoy making people uncomfortable and makes these kind of comments for shock value. But I felt like she should have turned it off around my boyfriend. She was only tipsy at this point, not really drunk. Overall, anytime he's nice to her, she'll say things like, "Haha, it's almost like you're my boyfriend." And whenever she refers to him around me, she'll call him our boyfriend as a joke. But I still feel weird about it. Will finds this all very uncomfortable and tries his best to avoid Cass as best as he can, or shut her down when she makes those comments. I'm not sure if I should bring it up with her because on one hand I'm very uncomfortable, but on the other hand I feel like she'll just deny everything or say it's for jokes and maybe get hostile with me. Any advice appreciated.